I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Maple Run Unified School District Board of Directors for October 16th, 2024, 6 p.m. And we are at the Northwest Center and Career and Technical Center, excuse me. First item is agenda review. Any revisions to the agenda? So the agenda is accepted without objection. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next item is visitors. Do we have any visitors in the room?
Yes, we do.
We do. Okay, and are these visitors that would like to speak?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and do we have any visitors online?
It doesn't look like we have any visitors currently, Nilda.
Okay, all right, so the public comment visitor section of the meeting is an opportunity for community members to address issues of concern about policy, budget, or administrative matters, or to share ideas about how we can work together to improve our schools. We value input and respect divergent views. We ask you to limit your remarks to a time of 3 minutes per topic and refrain from airing grievances with individual members of the school community, including respecting the privacy of the students and parents. Please, when you're ready, when you're called on to speak, please state your name and the town you live in. Those that are going to speak remotely can type their name in the comment section and will be recognized after those here speak. So first person is?
Hi, I am Dr. Jen Williamson. I live in the town and my son goes to SATEC. I have two things which I am concerned about. Apparently there was a junior varsity football game with South Burlington and racial slurs were being yelled at the game at the complex to the point that now South Burlington has a safety protocol whenever they're playing our students. I find that incredibly disturbing and I would love to see that addressed. The other thing that I am concerned with, there was recently a notice put out for puberty night for biological girls, and I just wanted to point out how sexist that is and that it leaves out both non-binary students as well as trans students, and I would love to see that changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else need to speak, wish to speak?
Nilda, we do have someone online right now, Tracy Sweeney, who would like to speak.
Okay. Tracy, please state your full name and what town you live in.
Hi, thanks so much. My name is Tracy Sweeney. I live in Georgia, Vermont, and I previously had a child who attended BFA. I also was made aware of slurs that were targeted towards opposing players during a football game at BFA, and it feels like this is something that happens repeatedly year after year, and I'm wondering what the board might be able to do about that. And also just hoping to hear more about what is going on in terms of the internal culture at the school in terms of addressing this type of behavior, because again, it feels like it's happened on more than one occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room or online that wishes to speak?
No one online, Nilda.
Okay. Moving on our agenda, the next item is the consent agenda. And we have on the consent agenda the minutes from October 2nd and the media packet. Does anyone wish to call any of that out for specific discussion? Hearing none, the consent agenda is accepted without objection. Next item is reports to the board. First item on the agenda is the student board representative report.
Hello everyone. I'm just going to give a brief introduction to our report. Cooper will be coming, but he is not here right now. So basically, the theme of tonight's board meeting is around consistent policies to address bias and behavior issues. And so as I've talked about in the past, we are going through a process of creating ideas for projects around each of the goals. And so we thought we would share some projects or ideas that we've seen we've put up on our wall in the section that's for that goal. And so the part I'm going to share with you all is the overarching umbrella of this is conversations and dialogues. So a couple of ideas that were thrown out there were student surveys around like SEL and stuff like that, and then have a monthly report to the staff meetings. Another thing that came out of that was BFA recently hosted a school safety dialogue, which was a larger thing around the organization Up for Learning, which we are working with, who was tasked by the Agency of Education to put out a survey to all Vermont schools, and if they wanted to participate they could, and also host dialogues at schools who wanted to participate. So that invitation was extended to all Vermont middle school and high schools, and BFA was one of the schools who took them up on it. And so it was basically about physical safety, and so a conversation that came out of that was after the meeting is students stayed after and were like, we want more of this. We want to have local law enforcement and have more of a collaborative time to really talk about our own localized school safety drills, because school safety looks different for every district and for every school in that district. And so there were other things like making reporting systems more aware for people. And yeah, I'll let you guys bounce in.
Another thing that we talked about was accountability. One thing that was brought up is that BFA personally has tiers of support to address issues that are brought up by students. So part of that was just ensuring that students, teachers, and parents know what those tiers are, and they're just a bit more informed around them. And also ensuring that students feel safer after experiencing instances of bias and behavior issues. And I will quickly introduce myself. My name is Amelia Wallace. I'm a senior at BFA, and this is my first board meeting of the year. So,
one of the last major topics we discussed was just reporting resources and resources for people to report things, and like feeling comfortable reporting things to teachers, and then online, like talking to the victims to see what they need in that moment because they've been victimized.
Yeah. And then the last little update I have is not related to that. But so as a result of last year, Cooper and I met with all the middle school student leadership groups, and so we decided that we wanted to have in-person interviews with the 8th graders who are now 9th graders, and ask them like what was effective about us, what was not effective about us, and what could we be doing differently, and you know, what do you wish for us to bring back to that middle school this year. And so far we've been able to connect with Fairfield, and we have reached out to those students, and we are setting up a time with SATEC for next week, and we will be meeting with their student leadership advisor, talking about how this year will work for them, and then we will then follow that with an email to the SATEC now 9th graders. So yeah, does anyone have any questions for us?
Thank you. Any questions for our student reps? Once again, thank you for keeping us updated on your activities. Moving on. Next item is consistent policies to address bias and behavior issues. I think Bill has a team that's going to speak to this, so I'm going to transfer it to Bill.
I'm just going to hand it right over to the team.
I'm gonna lift it.
If you want me to speak in the mic, can I put this up? Because I think I'm the shortest one on your team, maybe.
No, not tonight.
Don't put down Paul.
I think I was like,
Right. I'm not speaking.
you're not speaking. So, good evening. I'm Andrea Rasick. I'm the Director of Special Education for the district. I'm just going to walk through the beginning slides of the presentation, which is addressing the consistent policies to address bias and behavior issues. Who's running is that you, John?
That's me. Yeah.
Okay. So we're just gonna put it in context, the strategic plan goals, there were 5 there. And the one that we're speaking to tonight is your second bullet there. So that's just the context of what we're bringing to you. And the next slide, here go the glasses. So the goal that we're addressing tonight and reporting on is that Maple Run policies and procedures on harassment and discipline are consistently applied while ensuring support and respecting victims and all involved. And the theory of action was to design and implement a common code of conduct, train all stakeholders, ensure support for the affected parties, and then we'll reduce our number of behavior incidents in hazing, harassment, and bullying, which is called HHB, and the Title IX incidents within the district, and expect improved experience for all parties involved. So that's what we are charged to do. That's the overview. The next slide outlines how we anticipate meeting this goal. You can see there's an action steps, and then we outline the resource we will need to do the action steps. And then we've outlined what kind of evidence we would like to see that would then show that we have met this goal. Do you need me to walk you through that, or do you understand kind of the structure of how we're going about meeting the goals? Does that make sense? Do you want me to explain it in any more detail? Okay, because this is just the overview. And then, so we are looking at evidence to, is this you or me?
No, it's
Still me, right? So very specifically, the evidence to measure success on this area was that employees, students, and families understand the policies, know how to make a report, and how to get support for incidents of harm, bias, hazing, harassment, and bullying in Title IX, and informal qualitative assessments based on accuracy of reporting. So that's what we would like to see. And then some examples of this would be that the leadership team worked on creating a common handbook for all schools within Maple Run Unified School District. We're going to get details on that. The intention behind this work was to ensure that all the parents and students understood the policies and procedures of MRUSD. The leadership team created a subcommittee to ensure this work continues to further promote alignment with MRUSD, and that the subcommittee still intends to keep working on this. We didn't address everything that needed to happen, so it's ongoing work. And so the details of the handbook, which was our focus over the summer, are going to be explained. Any questions on how this is fitting in with the action plans? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Do you want to do the next slide?
Am I doing the next
Nope.
one?
No, it's you.
Okay.
All right, so we have one of the evidence to measure success is that MRUSD has an environment of kindness, respect, and inclusion as articulated in the code of conduct among students, staff, families based on annual surveys. So there is current work happening to have a family survey go out. Staff survey will take place this fall. And then we also added pre-K to 2 in our SEL survey this year. Had to be tweaked a little bit because you can't ask 12th grade question to a kindergartner. This is our 4th year using our behavior platform and kind of data hub panorama. So what's nice now is you can start pulling up trends, you can start looking at things individually, and do it very quickly. Like in about 30 seconds, I pulled up that last year in September, at BFA, we had 111 incidences total. This year we had 103. So went down a little bit, but also just held firm. So that's a good sign among many things. Starling Collaborative is helping our district with restorative practices, whether that's RRP groups, RRP training. I know specifically at BFA, we're looking at revamping our in-school support space. And then leadership, we worked with the Creative Discourse group last year to go through similar-ish things up here to help our growth and development.
I just got a
Yeah.
question about,
And
mentioned, the incidents going from
Yeah.
111 down to 104.
411 to 403.
411 to 403.
Yeah.
So is that considered a statistically significant amount, or is that?
I mean, I would say it's nice to see a number go down,
Yeah.
but also there's more that goes, it's just a very general number. So we have two categories, which are majors and minors. So minors are maybe just noting something that happened in the classroom. Majors are stuff that the office needs to help and support that student or the staff member. I would say, I just pulled those really quick. What I would actually look at is all 4 years and see where the trend is going in general. And if we're either holding firm or we dip down, I just grabbed the first two really easily that I could before I came up. So, but yeah, we'll look at like the longitudinal data. I would not really make any decisions based off of two numbers for 1 month out of the entire year.
And so that those numbers that you quoted, they don't differentiate between major and minor?
No, they don't. I can dig down and do that, but I just wanted to get a little bit more firm number and not have to explain in massive detail majors and minors. But great question. Thank you.
All right, next slide. I'm Kelsey, the principal of Fairfield Center School. So as John was talking about the panorama longevity data, it's really nice to see that we now have this for 4 years. So when a child goes from one of our pre-K to 8 schools, it follows them to BFA. So it's awesome to have that data there, which keeps track of their attendance, the SEL survey, along with their academic and behavior data. So it's nice to have that data there. Increasing the fidelity to defining the behaviors. Last year, Alexis Hoyt, she provided definitions to all of the behaviors and how they qualify under our tiered system. So is it a major? Is it a minor? So that supports common language across all the schools, and it also supports consistency and how we respond to behavior. I'm sorry. And our MTSS district team is starting this year. So in the past couple years, each school has created our own MTSS team. And now we're coming together as a district because some teams have grown and shown a lot of strength in areas. And we're using that opportunity to learn from one another and develop consistent protocols and ways how we analyze our data. Yes, Julie.
When you talk about working on increasing the fidelity to defining the behaviors to distinguish between major and minor, will you follow up with, whether it be a survey to staff or whatnot, to see what kind of an impact that education had? Because that's always the biggest problem, right?
Yeah.
How to distinguish, did people find that helpful? Did it impact the way you wanted to see it impact in practice, basically?
Yeah, I can speak for Fairfield. So what we did at the end of last year is my social emotional learning team. We met at the end of last year and we really dived deep into that. And we looked at our behavior data and saying, did teachers have enough clarity around what is a major and what is a minor? I think that's where the waters can get a little muddy because one teacher's approach can be different than another teacher approach. So seeing, do they have understanding? If not, what other supports and learning do we need to provide as a staff? So we did make some changes actually to our response and just noting when a behavior is made, if it's the first time, who's the person contacting home, and then what is a potential consequence. And so the consequence that we kind of developed is actually a menu because each consequence and each person, it's different, it ranges. So then the second time it happens, what is the menu of options of a consequence? Who does the contact home? And then by the time it gets to a third incident, it's usually qualifies as a major. And then a referral is made to the MTSS team because then it's a pattern of behavior. The next slide speaks to, so this is our district behavior. And so this is what Panorama has the ability to do, but what's also great is that it can have this capability for each school. So it breaks down by month the behavior and what it looks like. So this allows us to be proactive in looking. So for instance, if you go to the next slide, so this is an example kind of, so for Fairfield I can speak to. So usually I show it to my SEL team and we look at the behaviors that we're seeing and how do we as teachers need to respond to those behaviors. And it also makes us think, okay, what expectations do we need to reteach as a school? We also use this as our MTSS team. It allows us to then click on each behavior and it brings up students. So then we can identify if a student is flagged high for behavior, and when we can dive a little deeper in looking at their attendance rate, their social emotional survey. So just ensuring that each student's need is getting met. And then I also present this at the staff meeting once a month so they can see how we're doing. Anybody have any questions?
Out there, first of all, Kelsey, Andrea, and John, thank you very much for presenting that. One of the things Charlie, Milda, and I have been talking about is, and you said this as a board, of like hearing from other members of the leadership team. So all the leadership team members, and you saw the first one that has been divided up, that for all these monitoring reports would be given by a principal, an assistant principal, and a central office administrator, and then willing to take any questions. This is, as you remember, the strategic plan is a 5-year plan, so this is where we're at. We're not saying we're meeting those evidences, but we're using those as a way to track our performance. So we'd love any questions or comments that you have, and thank you again.
I just have a question. Does this apply to out-of-school events, like a football game or a sporting event?
John, do you want to answer that?
Do you mean like off campus, or you mean just in general?
Like if it was like the incident with BFA football?
Yeah, like if it involves a BFA sponsored activity or it's at Collins Pearly, yeah, we get involved. And so like for that one, I don't just do it on my own, because that's not good, because you want a group to do it with. So like I collaborated with our assistant, Dan Marlowe, our athletic director, and Jordan McGrady, our assistant AD.
And are there, I mean, there's adults and school employees kind of milling around. I haven't been to a game in a while, so.
Yeah, there are. We have safety workers that attend, admin will attend. There's also staff there, just in general, whether they're selling merchandise or not. So there's a lot of adults around there. Usually also our DLO, district liaison officer, will be there as well for football, especially for football games and basketball games and hockey games, or tend to be the high profile ones.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of following up on that, as far as public school events, if the problem stems from parents, is that something that you are involved in, or is that more of a, you know, at the complex staff that are there?
I think yes.
If there's.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think with that each situation is different, and I think that we would, I mean, obviously work with the complex staff, we would work with whoever was there, we'd work with our officers to kind of figure out what's going on. And then, yeah, we would take appropriate steps, probably pass it off to my fearless leader to my right here, if it gets to that level. So, but yeah, again, it's you know, we would figure out what the issue is, who needs to be involved, and then go from there.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions, or can we move on? All right, moving on the agenda, we have old business. The first item is policy committee member appointments. So most of you will remember that we passed a motion at the last meeting to establish an ad hoc policy committee. There was some discussion as to membership and et cetera. And the sense I got is the board wants to be involved in selecting the slate of persons that would be on this committee. So Bill, the appropriate way to advertise would be to do it how?
We do an ad out through our usual channels of public outreach and ask for people that were interested, just as we have before, and the board would, if there were more than people than what the 2 positions that aren't board members, if there were more than 2, then you'd want to talk about it as a board and determine who you, in other times you've done interviews, So I think you
Right.
could decide that as you go.
Right. And I do want to note that at the last meeting, I think we had 1 or 2 people that were interested that we will need to figure out how to handle that with whether they.
Yeah, I have their contact information, Hilda, so we can.
Okay, perfect.
We could
Perfect.
contact them back and say, ask if they were still interested, but we could put out a public notice about that too.
Okay, so board, does that work? We put out a request for those interested. We bring the slate back probably next meeting or at least the next meeting after that, and then pull the team together and then give them their assignments. Does that work?
Joanna?
I just need a clarification, Nilda. I think I left with the impression that the policy committee would be fluid. That maybe there's like a job description of who would be on it in terms of like administrator, board member, but not necessarily a specific individual in hopes of having people with, you know, specific expertise on whichever topic area that we were touching
Right.
on.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and I guess we can revisit that. My thought was that when you brought that up, that it was more of a, this is not a lifetime appointment kind of thing, that we need to have other members, and that maybe a team would be on and they'd work on a half a dozen policies, and then we'll get another team to work on policies, so that there is diversity of thought in addition to everything else. And I mean, would that work?
I think that's great. But when we're putting feelers out for people, I guess we would have to create the subgroups of policies that we're going to work on first, because it might influence who's going to volunteer for which subgroup, right?
Good point. So let's, if there are no objections, let's ask administration to carve that up for us, and perhaps. Yeah.
As your
Yeah.
superintendent, I have to say, if it's the will of the board, I'll do it. But I want to hear from all the board members that that's the will of the board. I actually would say this is not following VSBA's guidance that subcommittees have rotating people. So, as I believe, I'd have to go back and check that with the essentials book, but I just don't think it's good to be rotating through. If it wanted to be on a yearly basis to be different, that's fine. But I think if we were gonna, I don't believe, I'd want to hear the will of the board.
Yeah. So before I ask that question, the part that is difficult is the part where there may be persons that have some expertise in some topics due to their work or due to other organizations that they're involved in, that might provide some good information for certain policies and yet might not for others. So how do we handle that, Bill? As far as
you ask them, they can attend, they can come and give their expertise. We can ask people that we know have that expertise to comment on it.
Okay.
How many policies do we have to get through?
So, I'm trying to think of the correct way to answer you, Jess. We have had very minimal policies here in Maple Run, and my bias is to have few. But we have quite a few that we haven't enacted that are recommended by the VSBA or other good practices. So I don't have a total count for you. I've been trying to bring the critical ones because I need the board to take positions in different places on how we do operations. There are some superintendents who believe that having a lot of policies is good, that really control down into operations, and there's the opposite thought that very few policies that are broad are a good thing. And I think it's a balance of both. And so The policies, some of these are ones that we already have them looking for updates, and then some are ones that we haven't had that are we have operational issues that need the board to take a stance on. Example, the fundraising.
Right.
So I
And-
haven't gone through and done a matrix of all the VSBA required policies and recommended policies and what we have and what we don't have.
Right, and that was originally done when Maple Run became Maple Run. The discussion was, we can't take every single policy because we can't determine quickly how it applies to, if it applies to all the hospitals, yeah, right. All the schools or not, but so we went through, or I believe the superintendent or his designee went through and determined which ones do we have to have, like required by law to have, and those got sort of blessed and passed on, and I don't think a whole lot more work was done after that. The answer to many questions was, well, we have procedures for that. So many things were handled via procedure and not necessarily a policy governing it. I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but that's my recollection. So this is the right time, Jess, to work on some policies because it's overdue.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were just blessed and passed on because they were required. And because we maybe haven't had the need to use them, they've just stayed on the books.
And I don't mind, it's not a hard process to do to go get all because Nolda's correct, all the required ones we have. We're in the recommended, and then there's another stack that are considered, to be considered. And so what I have done in the past for prior boards is looked at all the recommended ones. I actually have never gone as far as the ones to be considered and just said, what do we have and what don't we have, and is there a recommendation if we need that?
Right.
Yeah, I was just thinking if it was like 5, we could just do one a month and invite people into the public meeting, and but if it's like 25, then we probably
My experience
do
working with 2 different policy committees in my history is that there was you have all the policies that you have, and there's a schedule for review, and it's usually about a third to a fourth of them get reviewed every year.
Right.
And that's the policy committee work, is to look at that. And a lot of times it was, nope, we're still good, or here was some legal references that need to be updated on most of them.
Right.
I think, listening to this, I think a good possible way to proceed would be to get a backbone of a policy committee with the option of, if there's a policy that comes up where there's not the expertise in the room, then we look to add someone to that committee. That would allow us to make sure that we're getting, or that we have a functional crew, and allow us to the flexibility to be like, okay, we need someone with an outside perspective for this particular thing. I don't know if that is running counter to VSBA guidelines or not, but.
Where I was with the subcommittee guidelines about creating subcommittees. And then as my thinking was thinking that you don't necessarily need to be a committee member, you need someone that can give you expertise.
Yeah.
So you could run it either way, but that's kind of where, in thinking about that, I want the best information at the table.
Right. I think that's a good suggestion, Charlie. Does anyone have any objection to moving forward? I don't want to make this a bigger thing than it is, right? Okay, because we've managed not to have this committee for a while, ad hoc committee, and they haven't closed us down yet. So, this is something that needs to be done, but I don't think we should lose our minds too much over some of the detail. Go ahead.
So you guys just kind of keep saying experts. So when you say expert, are you talking about like if this committee's working on behavioral policy, maybe having a behavioral specialist giving input to that? Because
If I said expert, I misspoke.
or someone like in that field from the community. Because even though they may be, I feel like, well educated in a certain area, I feel like that can also carry into other parts of different policies too. Like I feel like a behavioral specialist could also add a lot to like different parts of education, and I don't know, I just feel like it could, there's a lot of overlap, especially with like specialists in different areas.
Yeah, I guess to tag on off of that, like kind of like what Bill was saying, like have like a solid group of people that are there every time you have a meeting, and then just rotate who comes in to give the expertise is kind of like what you were getting at. Like if, you know, like you were saying, like if there's a policy with behavior expert, have the behavior expert come in. If they could also talk about restorative practice and social emotional learning. It could be different people, it could not be different people, but I think having the committee be made up of like the same, however many number of people it is, and they meet together every time, and then you bring in people to give you that expertise, and then you make a decision based on what that person is saying versus having 5, I don't know how many, like for 5 different people every time, you know, and then it just seems like it's not necessarily a policy committee, but it's like a behavior expert committee, and then it's a fundraising committee, you know, kind of like that.
I think consistency with a group like that is really important, especially when it comes to certain topics, that they're able to have actual conversations with each other, and that it's around multiple different areas of policy.
I think what you're suggesting is similar to what I am thinking.
Yes.
With the caveat that like if we have 20 policies to review, then we wouldn't want 20 different subcommittees.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I agree with the fact that we shouldn't have multiple different subcommittees, because it may be removing people out of the picture that could also provide input on different areas of policy.
That was not my point, just so.
Oh, no, I'm not,
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Okay, I just wanna make sure,
represent that as-
no way would I was saying, you know, whatever.
No, I did not mean to imply that you said that.
So what I'm hearing is we need a core group of people that we call the ad hoc policy committee. And then from there, we do what the right thing is. If we need expertise in another area, we seek it.
Does that sound like what you would?
Yeah.
Is
That
that the
sounds-
pleasure of the board? Is everyone agreeable to that? Any objections? Speak now.
Just to confirm, are we appointing these people who apply?
Yes,
We're
so
appointing them?
the slate will come back to the board. And depending on how many people we get, we'll have to figure out a process. It could be a really simple process, or it could end up getting more complex depending on the number. Hopefully it's going to be a simple process and we can get it going. That's what I understood from the last meeting, that the board wanted to be involved in this, so.
Yeah, I would just provide one more piece of advice is we were talking and we think it's a good idea for like the board to like take a stance and take ownership in like appointing people and that kind of thing. So doing it well and not just being like, well, someone wanted to do this, they thought it was fun, and may really take your time to like know the person who's going to be on this committee for a year and then take ownership in appointing them, because that's important when you're dealing with like a district-wide policy.
Yes, and I think the people on the committee should definitely have some background in policy. Like, I don't think a regular person, like I could not help craft or change district policy. I feel like they need to know somewhat of what they're talking about.
I think a good mixture actually would be great. I mean, somebody that's maybe experienced in that area, but I think also just the general population, especially parents, could provide great input. I mean, a mixture of parents, of administration, of teachers, I think just a well-rounded group could really come together and craft.
And that honestly might be more effective than having 6 people from the same different background.
Yeah.
You know, because then it's one policy view versus 6 different.
You get a better diversity of input.
So practically speaking, we're all supposed to be those people right now, right? Because we're the board is giving input to the superintendent on policies, as is right now today, without an ad hoc committee. So let's just proceed as we just discussed and see where we're at the next meeting when we see what the candidates are. Does that work for everyone? Head nods, thumbs up, a little bit of something to let me get a clue. I'm not hearing any objections, so I think we're going to go that way. Okay. Next item is policy work. So, Bill, we got a bucket load of policies here, and I'm going to turn this over to you to talk about the class size policy. But first, I need a motion to accept the class size policy for the first reading and warn for adoption at the November 6th, 2024 board meeting. Please.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second, Joanna.
Thank you. Okay, discussion. Bill?
Yep, so as we talked about last time, we talked about using the language that comes from the education quality standards, which has maximum limits in the education quality standards of an average of 20 for grades kindergarten through 3rd grade, and an average of 25 for grades 4 through 12. In addition, we were looking at the research, and when we get to diversity of thought for class sizes less than 15, and there are districts in Vermont that have this in their class size policy, that it doesn't say we can't have any, but we have to look at our procedures, and we have to look at the space, safety, the staffing, and the sections and program offerings. An example would be, I'm probably gonna pick the wrong AP course, and I may ask the students to help me with this, but there are some AP courses, and I believe AP Chem might be running this way where it's every other year. Thank you. I just should have that off the top of my head.
Alternates AP Chem, AP Bio.
There we go, there's a good example. AP Bio, AP Chem alternates years, so juniors and seniors have access to it, and they have a class size that can offer the classes to run. Another example might be our tech and design, where there are safety issues, where there's only so many students that you want in the shop at the same time working with the equipment. Or another good example of that same is in our woodworking. We have advanced woodworking and regular woodworking, even though it's called, it's 2 different sections, it's 2 different classes, but they're being held during the same period. So that those type of classes can be offered. I do want to give you a little bit of calculations on this, so I included in here our class size information from last school year and this school year. And looking at this, you would see in last school year, we would have had average class sizes at Fairfield in 2nd, 5th, and 6th grade, and there were multiple sections. And those were trying to balance, is it 26 or is it 13 in grades 5 and 6 in the classroom? Or is it 11 or 22 in grade 2? And you can see those maximums, so you have to have those tough discussions about how you're gonna make that work. That's why it's not a hard, fast bottom, but it's one of like, let's consider what we have for space. And it's making us have the conversation. One of the things, and I did talk to the leadership team about this, and we're gonna talk about a way that it comes back to the team for those discussions, if that's, because it affects the whole district when we decide to do that. And if you look at the high school at BFA, you would see in tech and design, just talked about that, about how they have, that's an average per section. And there's quite a few times in tech and design, they might have entry-level class and an advanced class in there at the same time, in the same period, but it's 2 different sections. You'd see that our fine arts is below that a little bit, and our world languages last year. And if you flip to this year, you would see some of the same trends with just different grade levels in the same places. City School has a couple places this year in 1st grade, in 3rd grade, and in 4th and 5th grade that are just below that 15. And let me give you an example of literally this summer at kindergarten at SATEC. Until the end of June, we had less than 56 students enrolled for kindergarten. So we were trying to decide, do we go with 3 sections of kindergarten or do we go with 4 sections of kindergarten? And we were ready to go with 3. And then at the end of June, we went over, we got to 59, and we always know we have a few more students who enroll the day of, a couple days before school starts. So we said, let's go to a 4th section. And sometimes that's doing projection, not actuals, but that's how we were using these class size guidelines for what type of sections and configurations we have. So I wanted to I got a little bit in the weeds, but I thought that would be good for all the board members to kind of understand how we use this data. And we use this data to start programming for next year in the budgetary process. And for you to with our policy, for us to stand together as a group, this really helps us in the budgetary creation process. So I'll take any questions or comments, or Nilda, did I miss something that I should have covered?
Questions for Bill related to class size policy?
You already touched on NCTC being,
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't really touch on that.
you briefly did.
Okay.
I wanted you to touch on it a bit more.
Well, Leanne's here, so I might have her help me. But at NCTC, we have a lot, in all our classrooms, we have a lot of authentic learning going on. In the tech center, there's times that safety can get involved with that, or limitation for space. And can you give us example, maybe one of each, of safety and limitation of space?
Sure. So in the automotive technology program, we have a 16:1 ratio, and if we have a lab supervisor, we can increase it to 21. And that's specific to there being hazardous occupations. And so the lifts that we have in the auto shop keep me up at night. There's 6 to 8 of those. That's considered a hazardous activity, actually, not occupation, although it can be a hazardous occupation. And then another example of space would be in our human services program. So there's no like hard and fast limit to having more than 16 in that class because there's not anything hazardous in there, but the room is so small, we just have no more place to grow, so we keep it at 16.
And you also have federal and state guidelines for class size that are different
Yes,
than the
correct.
state education quality standards.
Yeah, so from a policy perspective, my question is whether we need to add something.
So if you look at the procedure that's behind us, on the next page, you'll see there's pieces in there about technical education and class size differential.
Yeah, okay.
So that'd be under the safety and special circumstances in the classroom size. That's in the policy.
Okay, perfect. I actually have another question on the class size information. We have an asterisk next to kindergarten for 2023. Could you explain what the asterisk there is for? I don't see it.
Down at the bottom right.
Oh.
No, there isn't anything at the bottom. That's what I just said. I'm confirming with you. I'd have to recall because this is from last year's report and literally just took last year's report and put it in the packet.
Because in terms of class size kindergarten, it seemed, or at least in 2023, it seems to be an outlier in that it's largely below the 15,
Yeah.
although it seems to have increased in 2024. And I guess my question is whether, I mean, I would assume the increase is by design, but whether that's proving beneficial or not, or
Well,
if kindergarten would be.
At City School last year, we had 6 sections of kindergarten, and there was some thought into that for student need. And we have rearranged how we're distributing those resources.
Okay.
Yeah. And that, we didn't really have a class size discussion last year. This is really our first year of that.
Yeah.
As a district.
So I appreciate that we're talking about class size. How do you take this conversation and apply it to equity in terms of teachers?
Great question. So when we look at we're gonna talk about our model for budgeting. And when we look at this, we wanna know our class sizes and look at what we're having, not just in one school, because we have traditionally done this school by school. We are now moving our whole budget model, as we talked about in an education session, to where we're looking across the district, and that's gonna provide more equity for teachers across the district. And so this is really, really important for that equity piece that you speak of, Joanna, because it will really help us be able to say, wait a minute, let's look at those, how are we distributing those? And then at central office, we're not doing this from there. We have to be able to give some guidelines to the building and say, so how do you build within this? And what if you know the needs of your kids better than we do? There might be a good reason for doing something different. What is that reason? And come back and state that. And that's why our procedures allow us to do that. But we want to have a place to start.
Okay. We ready to vote? Amanda,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Nakuma,
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Nilda votes yes. Policies moved to second reading. Next policy is the community use of facilities policy. I'd like a motion to accept the community use of facilities policy for the first reading and warn for adoption at the November 6, 2024 board meeting, please.
I'll make the motion, Nakuma.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, discussion. Bill, community use policy.
Yeah, we talked about this at the last meeting. The biggest change in here is for-profit businesses will only be able to use Collins Pearly and would not be able to use our schools. That's the change from where we are right now.
Yes. Any discussion needed?
So does that mean like if it's like for a nonprofit organization, then they're allowed to have use of the building, but if it's a for-profit.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to take a vote on that motion. Amanda?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Nakuma?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Nilda votes yes. We have our second policy going for a second reading. Next item on the agenda is teaching and learning policy. And I've received a request to table this discussion for a future meeting. So can I have a motion to table for a future meeting, please?
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you. We're gonna vote. Amanda?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Nakuma?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And Nilda votes yes. Policies tabled. Next item is the equity policy. Bill, this is the policy that we were going to wanted to speak with Harry Frank about. So let me turn the discussion over to you.
Okay, well, the board had approved the idea of going with Up for Learning and Harry Frank to help facilitate the process of creating an equity policy as Up for Learning has with other districts, and with the Student Voice Committee helping us with that, so a teamed effort here. And so you and I just haven't had time to sit with Harry and set up a schedule, but I know that in our discussions with the prep for the meeting with you and Charlie and I, we were talking about, wanted to ask the board about, we have a busy budget season. Is this something we want to do during budget season? Do we want to wait to the end of it? Just what's the pleasure for the speed of this going forward? Because there would probably be at least one community forum piece of it to have the community come in and talk to it. We have a lot of data from the strategic plan and the goals work that's been done over the past 2 years, but we just want to affirm, before this is a very important policy, the board would want to affirm with the community that we're going in the right direction.
Right. Any suggestions, board? I think it's going to be a busy budget time, so I don't know how much time people have in their life to make additional time.
I'd like to at least attempt to do it concurrently with the budget if we could. Maybe we find out that is not working. Maybe we find out that we're not being as effective as we could, but I'd rather not put this one on the back burner.
Okay. Anyone else?
Jordan?
Just that this is why we talked about, so we're not only doing one thing at a time, that if we can be dividing and conquering, then, multiple people can be taking on multiple, or not multiple roles, but different roles to be able to address these things that need to happen. And that's what asked to you, Bill, was this something that you felt you needed to be at both of these meetings? Or is this something that you would feel comfortable if John was at, you know, one of these and you were at one, so we were just kind of dividing some of these tasks?
Yeah.
Instead of, and it doesn't need to be answered in this
No,
moment.
I'd be glad to answer, because you asked me at the last meeting.
Okay.
I've given some thought in what John does and what I do, and this is one that I would be staffing all the time, because I do the policy workshop.
Okay.
I will say, I feel like we did manage to, with the creative discourse group last year, work with them consistently, and it's a pretty similar kind of setup with the meetings kind of 3 or 4 times and then a community forum at the end. So just coming off of like last year's experience, with the 4 of us attending like pretty much all of the meetings that there was, I know we found it pretty doable, and I know we have very busy schedules, and all of you have it too. And so I think personally that it is doable to, have it done concurrently with the budget work and this, just from a personal experience.
I will say, I don't think I was clear enough at the beginning when I was explaining the piece of, we were talking about this policy in particular, not going through a policy committee, because it's so important that it would be the board doing the work with this policy. Other policies, yes, but this one is very critical that we have the whole board there in the discussion. And Harry's in his piece, because he's reviewed our work and worked with the students for 2 years, that this would be probably a 3-meeting process to do this, and that he would come in, facilitate initial discussion with the board, set up a community forum piece. Because he's been a support to the Student Voice Committee for the past 2 years, this is his 3rd year doing that he knows our strategic plan and our goals in helping that. And he has done the similar type work with students at other districts to help facilitate that with the board. But I think this is one where I wouldn't want to have it out with a committee. I think it's so important that the board be on this one.
Yep. I'd rather not postpone it. I'm wondering if we can use our Monday education nights, switch it to working on this policy, so it wouldn't be additional time.
No,
for everybody.
what I'm hearing from people who've spoken, I haven't heard everyone, hearing the importance, it's really about jiggering the agendas and what else. I think there's other work that can come off the agendas to do budget in this. That may mean some of our reports get moved a little bit with our reporting schedule. And that's where the whole board meeting plan is, it's a plan. It's not concrete. So like, hey, let's move this report here, do this work then. So that type of thing.
I actually think the equity policy will help guide the budget too, because they both go hand in hand on how much the adjustments that we're making to hit the target budget and how it's going to affect our students. I think policy can go hand in hand. So I think working on it together would be a good idea.
So I think I'm hearing that people want to do the work concurrently. And I think if we can't manage to do that, I think it will become obvious as the process moves along. So why don't we try to set up some time, Bill, with Harry, Frank, and
I'm actually with Harry tomorrow, so I'll get his calendar and we'll figure that out.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Next item is fundraising policy. I'd like a motion to accept the fundraising policy for the first reading and warn for adoption at the November 6, 2024 board meeting, please.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Charlie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jess. Discussion, Bill, fundraising policy.
Yes, this policy is very similar to Champlain Valley, Milton, Harwood Union. I haven't gotten everywhere to go look at it, but I know that, as I said, the last meeting originated there, which just talks about it's not stopping fundraising. I want to make sure I'm really clear about this. This is not stopping fundraising. It's saying that we have a correct way to do it. We have procedures that must be followed to do it. This is more about financial accountability and protecting the organization.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill on fundraising?
Are we gonna be able to see the procedures?
I don't know if I gave them last time from Milton. I think I gave you two. I haven't written them yet, and since that's my responsibility, you know, I can always show you procedures, and I'm always more than willing to. I was gonna look at what Milton has. BFA has a procedure that they use already in-house, and I haven't had time to compare that. If you'd like that for the next meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Just, there's like two things that I think are important is that all the parents are notified that the fundraising's happening and that not everybody has to participate. There's no coercion or pressure.
And I think we have that in this.
It's optional.
Yeah, exactly. I think
Yeah.
we have that in here that no one can. Let me review that for you,
Okay.
Jess, but that is the intent.
Yeah, I think it's good to make sure that, like, is in there, like, you cannot force or, shame people for not participating, cause that, you know, goes hand in hand with the equity piece, like, that's not really right to do to someone if they don't want to.
Is it possible, I haven't worked with any of the fundraising sites, but is it possible to make fundraising anonymous through those sites?
I think it probably depends on the site.
Depending on the site, there are sites that allow for anonymous fundraising.
Because I think anonymous fundraising could be good. The ones I've seen, they all have people's names on it, which I think could lead to sort of the pressure to fundraise and fundraise and fundraise.
Is one of the concerns for the implementation of this policy like liability? So like, let's say one of the schools, I know BFA has a policy that you can't do, you were kind of talking about that, like bake sales. So is that kind of like where I'm just curious kind of.
It's more about fiduciary responsibility, that everything runs through our accounting system that Ms. King's in charge of, and that she is able to, when someone asks us, that we know where the money has flowed.
So you just, two teachers aren't randomly fundraising and people have no idea where the money went.
Got it, Cooper.
So are we ready to take a vote, or do we need more information?
We have another question or two.
So Mackenzie Smith, she's another board member. She participated in a Powerpuff football this past year, and she brought up to me in class today, how would this policy necessarily work with something like that, where the foremost thing is fundraising and kind of the secondary thing is the actual game?
So it's something, the way our BFA current procedures work is that you submit a form that you're going to do this, what you're intending to fundraise for, what your expected goal is, and how the money is being collected and how the fundraising is happening. It'd be something similar to that, but also ensuring that before fundraising goes out, that that's really well communicated with the school, and that the piece that Jess just said about no pressure on students that they have to do it to take part, and that the money goes for the general good of the group, not their individuals.
Yeah, because you said this policy is pre-existing at BFA already.
There's a procedure at BFA, there's not a policy. What this is doing is giving it the power of the board to say that we endorse that this is how we're doing this work.
And I just want to, so we're looking to avoid a situation where, Jimmy raises the most money, so he gets the most benefit out of it. Could we make sure to also make sure that we're addressing like incentives and prizes, like Jimmy raised the most money for at the big sale, so he gets a T-shirt as a bonus.
So I think which I think would go under, and it needs to be in procedures, but when I look at the school board recognizes the need to prevent exploitation of students, those prizes is something that, it doesn't seem that extreme with those words, but that's exploiting students to go out.
And sometimes that even happens in classrooms, right?
Right.
They'll have, one grade over another, or, at BFA, it's, the intent is to gain, student engagement, but
at the same time, it puts pressure on.
puts pressure on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got a question about that. That's exactly my issue with fundraising, is that my son, what was he? I think it was last year, 3rd grade. He was fundraising. I forget what it was for. It was optional. And some students partook in it and they got prizes. And then he found out that they got prizes. I, being a 3rd grader, I'm the one who's going to have to go around and try to fundraise for him. He's, 8 at the time. And then he's upset because he didn't get prizes. And why didn't I let him fundraise? Why, it's like, it puts kind of pressure on people that, I mean, yeah, I guess grandparents can probably afford $25 box of, 4 chocolates, but a lot of people can't, so it's kind of like, I don't really like that, but.
So would that eliminate different activities such as jump up for heart? Because I know that's like, you work your way up and you get certain prizes on certain increments of money you raise.
I think we have to look at that, Cooper, to kind of get to that pieces and the outside fundraisers versus what we do inside. I think there's different pieces, and as Amanda was just speaking to, I think of years ago, I was part of the gift wrap selling. I can't remember how many years ago it was, but it was many years ago in my past, and there were prizes for kids for how much they sold. I can also tell you stories that I know of parents that told me years ago, and I know this story literally just happened 2 months ago in our district, where a parent who shouldn't be giving money so their kid wasn't embarrassed for not bringing in money, was giving money that they really need to spend for life expenses. And that's what that's my motivation for let's get this thing in place.
Bill, fundraising brings up some nightmares that I had as a principal or superintendent. And one of the things that would probably be in procedures would be a club, sponsored by a teacher, decides to sell, let's say, jewelry. And this is an actual thing that happened to me. The kids went out, they sold a bunch of jewelry and whatever, and it was all costume jewelry, but they made a lot of money, whatever. And a few months later, I get a call from the jewelry company that they never got paid. And bottom line is, the staff member gave out all the jewelry. The kids, collected the money from people, brought all the money back to the school, and the staff member didn't pay the company.
Yeah.
So, in the procedures, I'm sure there's something about that.
That's the reason for the fiduciary responsibility. Brianna and I have talked about this quite a bit, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
And that money goes through our accounting system.
Makes sense.
Would fundraising just apply to monetary things, like in which people were raising just money, or would it apply to other things?
My only thinking right now is monetary
Okay.
issues.
Are you thinking of
Okay, so,
when they
excuse
do
me.
the food drive or
Yeah,
something
well,
like that?
Mr. Kimball brought up prizes, and I just remember we would, in middle school, whatever class brought in the most food, you got a pizza party. And so then I was just wondering, would the wording of the policy still allow people to do things like that?
That's a good point.
Because I think those things are still important.
Yeah.
Which class raised the most cereal?
Right,
They have
right.
that for
We
sandwiches.
have that too, yep.
So just good to keep in mind when you're writing it, so it doesn't have to,
I mean,
rain on that parade.
This could even tie into the whole equity policy that we were discussing, this direct topic. I mean, I don't see a reason why they couldn't go kind of like hand in hand in discussions.
So,
I'll bring those procedures now, though. I'll make sure they're in the packet for next time. Jessica, can I just ask
So-
you a direct question? We had taken Milton's procedures and just shown those last time. I can put those in the packet along with the BFA current procedures, or would you like me to take the time and try to meld them and put it in for a procedure? Usually after policy is written, then I work with the leadership team to develop procedures.
Yeah, no, you can put them in separately.
Okay.
Or I can go back and.
No, I'll get them. I'll get them for the next packet. Yeah, we'll have them there.
so should we proceed by voting this motion down and looking at it fresh next month? Or can we approve this motion and move it to a second read? It feels like we should vote this motion down.
I don't see any changes to your policy that anyone suggested. I heard a lot of discussion about procedures, unless I heard
Okay.
something wrong. And I'd ask him if I heard something wrong.
All right, then let's vote on the motion as it was made. Amanda,
You're muted, Amanda.
Sorry. Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Nakuma,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Hilda votes yes also. Motion carries and moves the policy on fundraising to a second reading at meeting. Next item on the agenda is central office facilities issue. Depending on how this conversation goes, we may need to go into executive session because we are able to go into executive session if we're talking about real estate purchases or lease options. So, Bill, should we start the discussion and determine whether or not we need to go into executive session, or should we save this topic for the end of the meeting and just do that? What's your recommendation?
My thinking right now, I don't know what the questions of the board will be, but for what I have to update the board is all for public session. So we can start it that way, and then if people have questions, we can go into executive sessions if it's about real estate transactions, but we still need to get into requests for proposals, which we haven't done yet.
Okay. So let's do central office facility issues, Bill.
Yeah, so with the work that we've been doing as we told you the past couple of meetings, our focus has been on establishing a space for the middle school alternative program, which we have done, and you approved that this past month. We are currently starting to look at other alternatives for central office. As I informed the board the last time, our estimate with Laz Skangas, our architect, is somewhere between $2.8 and $3 million worth of work our current central office building needs. And that's pretty much a gutting to the studs and replacing all the utilities and coming back up. So if the board's, I'm just checking with the board, frankly, is we're ready to start creating an RFP for proposals to come back about central office. And I just wanted to check if, from what we had told you last time, we think that it will be better, and at the end, what we would be recommending to the board is selling 28 Catherine Street and putting that money back into our capital fund. So that's, if we were to move, that's what we would be doing. So I just wanted to check with the board and see if there are any questions or concerns, or if we keep going down that road, which I'm recommending we do, but I just wanted to have a check. That's why I asked Milda if we could put this on the agenda for tonight.
Any questions related to this from the board?
Sorry.
What is the value of?
So that's when I want to do an executive session, because it has to go to a bid for, and we want people, I wouldn't want to release publicly what our estimate is of our property, because it would have to go to public bid to sell. And I'd be glad to give you that information, as I do have.
Okay, then I would just ask that we don't vote on anything until.
Yeah, no, I'd want, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We don't ask to vote on it.
I'm not asking for a vote tonight, I'm just checking in, I'm doing a temperature check.
Oh, yeah. What about the alternative program?
The middle school alternative program is a program that we had presented back in June, and we looked for a space, and we were awarded to the Highgate Commons for a space for 4,000 square feet. Yep.
I'm gonna miss something too, so where's central office going to move?
We don't know yet.
Oh,
We have to
okay.
put out a request
Okay.
for proposals for spaces, and so when we started doing that, we would look at different alternatives of what people wanted to bid for a place that we could lease.
And if we fix up the building, why would we then sell it and not just?
So we wouldn't fix it up, we would just sell it as is.
Oh, I see, okay.
It takes
okay.
about $2.8 to $3 million to fix it up to the
Okay.
standards we need it at,
Mhm.
is the estimate right now.
Yeah.
How much space do you need?
So that's a good question. The space, the central office is, as anyone who's been in there, is a hodgepodge. So that's currently, we occupy 7,500 square feet. We think we need anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 if we were to use space efficiently. And that includes the boardroom. And there's not a lot of spaces like that in St. Albans area.
Is that all people who belong in central office, or is that overflow because people can't find offices in the schools that they're working in, or in the?
That, with the people that are staffed out of central office, we have other folks that should be in central, that should be their district positions that are out at schools. So I think that's a long way of me saying, you answering your question of like, the people that can fit in schools are in schools, and the people that are at central office are, that's where they've been able to be. About half that building is, I'd say a third of that building, that's wrong. A third of that building is early ed,
Right.
central ed. And before, at one point, that was separate from central office. They were housed in two different places. We've talked about that. We'd rather have our whole team together because it is really helpful in culture and the climate in the office to have the whole team together. And so, that's what we'd like to do, but we also understand that may not be a reality with what's out there and is available. And it's most cost effective.
I think that should, if we, when we talk more specifically about that, that maybe we could talk about it in two models.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Then I might have to have 2 RFPs going out. Because I've had people approach me about 2 spaces. And I haven't gotten a model of the cost because I've been working on everyone in one space right now.
Can you tell us the numbers? I know you're saying a third, but I guess just so people have a better understanding of what that, sorry.
When you, square footage, just want to make sure the
No,
numbers.
people,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, people.
So I'm doing this from memory. So
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
gonna say
not
it's,
gonna.
it's accurate, okay? And I'm counting, literally walking through the building myself right now. So. There are 12 people for ECP. And this is right on my table at my office.
It's okay.
There's 32 people total in the office.
Okay.
And so, and then we have 4 people for special education. Some of these roles get split between departments because we're splitting up tasks. We have 3 BCBA or applied behavior folks along with Alexis, so it's a 4 there, 3 in HR, 5 or 6 in business, because there's the Medicaid position kind of works in business, kind of works in special ed. And then there are 4 with the superintendents, that includes the PR, Aaron Russo's PR position. So, I hope that all totals 32, I was doing it by.
Yeah, I mean,
mid-memory.
even just central office versus ECP.
Yeah. And so we know that about a third of the space, ECP, another big piece of theirs is that they have a lot of materials that go, yeah, and they're working with private partners. So a lot of those folks are in and out with private, I want to really support our ECP folks. The reason they're staffed out of central office is they need a desk and a place to work. And they're out working with our private partners a lot, probably more than they are in the public, because we have our public preschool staff and special educators that work in our public, in our classrooms in the buildings.
I know we can't predict what's around the corner in terms of state funding.
Yeah.
You know, but listening to you know, the news when they're talking about how legislators have kind of put together this, you know, radical budget idea that they're gonna, you know, propose to people about really changing how, I don't know if it's gonna be positions are reconfigured, the way schools are reconfigured, the way districts are reconfigured. I don't know what that proposal's gonna look like.
Yeah.
But should we not be more aware of what these proposals might look like in terms of how it could be impacting our district before we go ahead and make these really big decisions, especially if we're looking at like in brick and mortar.
So then I've got to find a place for our staff to be right away, because as we said in the last meeting, the central office is not a healthy place to be in. We don't have any HVAC. We are, you know, it's just we have some folks who are having a tough time with that, being in that environment.
I think we should let Bill move forward with his recommendation, bring it forward, and then we can have something to react to. Because right now we're kind of crystal balling it, or what do they call it, spitballing it or something, and we really don't know until we find out something. Would that be acceptable?
I would just quickly recommend that everyone's together. I feel like that is better for like teamwork and collaboration for like a district than having people in like different offices. Personally, like hearing this, I'm like, it makes sense for all of central office to maintain central, not like be in multiple different locations.
Yeah, I don't think there's a big argument against that. We're sort of we have the constraints of the geography that we're living in.
Would it be possible to like build onto one of the existing schools, like an addition almost? Is that a possibility?
It is, and there has been talk about could be possible use of our capital fund. If we have to go out to bond something, then that's a vote of the voters, or if we want to buy something that we don't currently own, we take the vote of the electorate.
I know like a couple of schools like City Tech has land that's not used necessarily like for sports and like fields, but like that is a possibility. I don't know about the zoning or anything like that, but possibly building it.
Right. Okay. Any more discussion about this?
Just a quick question. If we move forward with the RFP, what would we be looking at for a deadline for the RFP?
I don't know yet, because I haven't sat down and done all that program. I'm hoping that November we can release something and we get something back in December.
Okay. And are you concerned about the holidays mucking around with that deadline?
People who lease space,
They don't.
that doesn't matter.
Okay.
They'd rather lease their space.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to other business. Warrants. I need a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of the motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board members participating remotely. Motion, please. Is there a second?
Oh, yeah, she is.
Quick question. I think we skipped over new business.
Community forum plan.
Oh, yeah, we did. So Charlie, can you take over? I gotta quit.
Okay, yeah.
I'm really not feeling well and it's not working.
Okay.
So I'm gonna bail out right now, and if you can just take over, please.
Okay, feel better soon.
Thank you.
So we're on 8A, new business, community forum program, or community forum plan. And I'll pass it over to Bill.
Yeah, one of the things we had talked about at the last meeting was moving the community forum to the first meeting in November. So we're gonna move the meeting from being at central office to City School Library, where we have more space, and hopefully people will show and have discussions, and we would have a format there that board members would sit down with different members of the community, different, any staff that would show up, and then just really, we would do a little, I'm right now creating an overview of Maple Run, the goals that the board has adopted for the district, the work that we're doing this year, and some indicators both on our demographics, our students, our budget, our tax rate, and how we're doing overall, to be able to look at that, to start a discussion of what are the priority areas that we should be looking at as we look at an FY26 budget. I've got a really rough draft of this piece, but I'm gonna have more of that. At the same time, we had talked about last time, and Aaron Russo had worked with me, and it's in your packet, and we have kind of a questionnaire ready to go out where there's some rankings of things that mean most for people in our district, and we're really trying to stay with the positive side of this. So like, where are your hopes and where are your areas that when you think that are really you're proud of in Maple Run, and to try to rank them, and then to also think about some open-ended questions about what makes you proud. Should school resources be allocated in a way that supports students who need them the most? So really that equity distribution that Joanna, you were speaking to, that piece of like, is there a way of making sure we have equity across the district? So that's really, and that's helped some other districts when they've been building their budget, knowing where their community was on that. And what makes you proud of Maple Run? What concerns or creative ideas do you believe can improve our schools as we build a budget? What do you want us to know? What else do you want the board to know as we enter into the project process? So really some really open-ended things. Bring that information to the community forum as a basis of the start of the conversation, and have some probing questions that groups of people can sit around a table, and that you as board members can listen to and get some thoughts of what the community has to say.
When will this be going out?
So we're ready to go out tomorrow with this.
Who is it going to?
So we were gonna post it on Facebook, Instagram, we would send an email to everyone that's in the Maple Run in our email blast communication that we do with our rapid communication system.
What about taxpayers that aren't
So,
part of the
electronic form.
Because they're the ones that could have a different say.
That, I mean, we're gonna be announcing it everywhere that this is happening, and come to our forum. It doesn't have, it's electronic means there is no one perfect way for everything, so it's using that multiple way of doing it. So people can come to the
So
forum.
this is gonna be electronic?
This is gonna be electronic to bring information to the forum. I wouldn't say it's the end of the information gathering, I'd say it's a way to see that conversation.
I was just thinking this might be something that we could put on election day, hand it out to people.
If the board would like to do that.
That would reach different segment of the population that votes on the budget.
Yeah.
Is that in keeping with election laws?
I'd have to ask our
Don't know.
clerk. I'd have to ask our
I
clerk.
could
Right.
get
If it was down the street, maybe.
Yeah, you have to be a certain distance away, but I don't know what distance it is.
Yeah.
Can you do it tomorrow night during the, what is that, the debate at BFA and then at City School?
Yeah.
If you'd like to have the questionnaires and take them, I can give them to you. Yeah.
Wait, what's the debate?
There's a debate.
It's not, the Maple Run Education Association's hosting a debate. Is it tomorrow night, Mike?
Yeah.
A debate here at this, you know? I just heard yes from other folks that are.
Katie's one of the co-moderators.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's another one at City School. that the
What time's
students
that
are-
start?
6:30.
Not
Without bringing up my phone, I couldn't tell you, Cooper. I can barely stay in the meeting I'm in, you know? Like sometimes.
Sorry, it just sounded interesting.
I keep kicking you.
Okay. It's all over.
I haven't seen any of it, I'm all around social media, I saw a city school one, but I didn't see it on the thing.
So, I mean, yes, if board members, you know, we can, what we're doing is, we've already created a Google survey. We can print out the pages of the survey, and if you wanna take them somewhere and bring them back to us, we'd be glad to have it.
And where should folks go to?
They would need to come to central office probably tomorrow afternoon, because I'm pressing Aaron a little bit to get this done.
Get on it, Eric.
For tomorrow night, after that.
Yeah,
No,
that
it's not this Aaron, it's Aaron.
Yeah, that one.
Aaron Russo. But I know we can print out the Google form because I saw it's already created.
Yeah, the city school one's on the calendar, but not the BFA one.
Yeah.
6:30. Any other items about the community forum plan?
So the other thing I wanted to bring to your attention, I just put it in the packet literally right before the board meeting, so I brought printed pieces as well, is one of the things that Nilda, Charlie, and I have been talking about is being able to let the board know about the meetings coming up, about budgets, about decisions that we're gonna be asking the board to help us with. And so I wanted to kind of foreshadow that. And I wanted to talk about when might you want a second budget forum? Or do you want a second budget forum? So what I did is I listed out the board meetings here. And then the board agenda topics, this comes from the board's plan. I just took this from the board's plan. And then for what's the work the leadership team's doing, but then what's the decision? Over on the right-hand side is what the decision, so at the next meeting, after we have that community forum, we have always done, what are the core assumptions? So what are the inflation rates that we're gonna use for electricity? We go and research that, bring that back to the board. What's the average cost for teaching, for licensed personnel, for ESP and non-licensed that we're gonna use in the budget building process? We usually, every time, the past few years we've used that, that's really helped. The class size piece you were working on tonight, excuse me, I need some water. And then if we have to look at cuts, what are your priority areas? And I'm gonna tell you there, as we talked about our budget model, we have 3 priority areas. One that's core staffing, and I'll explain, next time I'll make sure I have a list of you of like what type of positions are in each of these. Core staffing, money that we allot for school size, which basically gives a diversity, increases the diversity of offerings or lowers the class sizes. And a third one, which is equity, positions that are put in there to provide equity support. Now, I want to be clear, there's, in the core staffing, there are some positions that do equity support, not just in the equity only. But we take 10% of our budget for personnel and distribute it based on equity measures. And if you remember when we talked about this as a board, when we looked at all our different historically marginalized groups, it always came back to poverty was the biggest indicator for inequity.
So Bill, you know, I think with the climate of, you know, school budgets and state budget and so forth, this year, we've got to be very conservative and really, unfortunately, think about making cuts in things that we absolutely don't need. And obviously, that's a very difficult topic and a difficult decision because we have to, you know, rely on our admin team to suggest things that they could live without in a tough budgetary season. In the past, we've had, you know, St. Albans area and Fairfield have always been very supportive of schools. Many school districts didn't pass their budgets, we did, barely. And that gives us a message that, you know, the public wants us to be more conservative. And I'm a bleeding heart liberal person when it comes to what kids need. And I've always fought for not reducing staff and not cutting out sports and those kinds of things, because I think every kid, in my doctoral dissertation, I said every kid needs a tennis racket. What I meant was every kid needs something to either football, cheerleading, math league, debate club, whatever. And the tennis racket is very different for every kid, but we need to show the public that we're making tough decisions and we're being as conservative on one hand and also making sure our staff and our kids get the best we can give them. But if there are places we can not have without, you know, eliminating things that kids really need. And that's the difficult balance. So, but I think we all need to, and being a person who's very liberal about that kind of thing, for me, I've had to say to myself, it's this time, we've got to be conservative about this stuff. And that's just my feeling. Sorry to be on a soapbox, but.
At what point does the state, like, you were telling us about it at one of the board meetings last year where they cap the increase to the tax or something like that? At what point does that kick in, or has it kicked in already?
That got scrapped.
Yeah, actually, that got scrapped, but there's actually a new thing that's called a excess spending threshold.
Okay.
So we can spend up to a certain limit, then we start getting a penalty of extra money we have to pay in to be able to spend more. And so there'll be a penalty for spending above that limit. And we'll bring you more of that information later on. I don't want to get into that detail because frankly, I don't have it right with me.
Okay.
An update for the community forum, how fun. So I did find out something to kind of piggyback off of what you said, how it might be illegal to sort of hang out at the polling station. There is 2 weeks after that time, or maybe 3 weeks, yeah. 2 weeks. There is the BFA school play, and that is a place where you will not be met with law enforcement to solicit those those forms. And so that is the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd from 6:30 to.
I believe it was 6:30.
6:30 to past my bedtime at 9, and then it is Sunday, which is a matinee, so it's super fun in French, and that is from 2 to 4, 3 to
1 to 3.
1 to 3. That is from 1 to 3. So that might be a good time to get different people, and then to get some of the younger people at the matinee of those younger parents who are like just coming into the district, that kind of thing. So that might be.
And
good.
Last year we presented you guys some data, and that's where we collected it. We all kind of divided and conquered and split up into groups, and we went through different times of the show, and we just handed out slips, then collected them at the end for feedback.
Yeah,
and presented that data. It was a pretty quick turnaround as well.
Yeah, the stuff we collected at that stuff kind of at those plays kind of drove our work for the rest of the year. So it is really good, and we'd be happy to help you all out with that and use that data to our own advantage as well.
And the people that we kind of handed stuff out to were actually, I'd say, really into it. And it sparked some, I would say, good conversations with them about just different issues in the community, and also what we're doing well as a board, which is also really important to focus on.
And conveniently, I'll be at all of those performances, so.
Yes.
The last piece that I would ask that we're going to talk about at the next meeting, and I'm just trying to do this as so everyone has some time to think about it, is we're going to be asking for what 3 models and really targets you'd like to us to model for you. Charlie, I believe at one meeting you had kind of said these are the 3 models you were thinking about.
Yeah, I give my opinion on it, clearly.
Okay. So, but we're gonna wanna talk about that, is where you want us, what type of spending levels. And I'll go through, I did at the last meeting that, roughly we're, if we keep a level service budget, it's an increase of $4.2 million. If we look at the governor's letter of a 3% spending increase, it's about $2 million less than that, around 2.2. I'm doing these off of rough figures. And then, so those are 2 areas that I know have been, that we, last year, the board gave us direction to just build a level service budget, so.
Something to bear in mind, building up what Marie said about the last year with the whole cap and everything. The cap went away, but the state did put in a reduction based on, I believe it was weighted people count or something like that. Last year it started as 3 cents, and then it was going to be phased, you know, lower this year, then lower next year until it eventually goes away. I don't know if that's been factored into any of these.
We had it factored into our budget for our current spending right now. We can show you how that's working. But I just want to say, the one thing that allows the miss of this excess spending threshold that we used to have is now back. So there's an upper limit, and then there's a penalty for dollars you spend. I love that.
And I look forward to hearing about that.
We also talked about trying to model using trend information on what we have not funded or what we have not spent. I don't know how many years, you know, you think would be good to look at that.
Probably 3 years.
Okay.
That's and all this data that I talked about that I wanted to read because it's so rough right now.
Yeah.
That we'll have for the next meeting. We could put that in there too.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And if there's something I show you for data and you say, wait a minute, I want to know more about this, please ask. Please ask. More than willing to get it in here.
Any other questions or comments?
Did you have one?
Okay, so we will get the survey out tomorrow for anybody that needs it. Amanda, I hope first, if you want to stop by the office, if you can't get a hold of myself, you can talk to either Aaron Rushlow or Aaron Smith if you want to have those, or anyone else wants those for the candidate forum. We will get that out and we'll start posting it all around. I will, Aaron Smith, if you can help me remember to call the town clerks and ask them about putting something at the election. You can find at the polling places, we can ask about that, and we can let you know through. And if it is so, then I'll let the board take that.
All right, moving on to other business, and on to the warrants. Looking for a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of the motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board members participating remotely. I don't know if we got a motion before we backtracked on that, but.
So moved on the motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second that, McCullough.
Okay, and any discussion? No, so we'll vote. Amanda?
Yes.
Charlie is a yes. Joanna?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Nakuma?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Did I miss anyone? No? Okay, so that passes. And we move on to superintendent report.
So a great idea happened today. And I want to say that I think it's a really good idea. As you know, John and I have been doing our podcast. I hope that you're all listening to it. Brittany's been giving me good feedback. She actually said, hey, I listened to those. Those were great. And then gave me some feedback, which I need. I need a lot of feedback. So this was the idea, and I thought it was a great idea. If there was a board member that would like to join us the last week in October to be on the podcast. And we have a set of 6 questions that we ask everyone, and then either at the end we ask you what brings you joy or what you're grateful for, or you can turn and ask us, John and I, a question. It's really a conversation that we have a lot of fun with. We just taped today for next Monday. We always tape on Wednesdays, but we can be flexible about it, and we can be flexible where we're at. And I think in next week's recording, you'll hear where we were at, because we had some background noise. But if I will put it out through email, but if there's someone that would like to, one of the things we're really trying to do is, through this podcast, is just celebrate all the different members of our community. And when that was suggested to me today about having a board member, it's like, that's a great idea. Let me ask tonight if there's anyone that's saying, yeah, I'm dying to do that. Otherwise, I may try to twist some arms through some email and say, come on, wouldn't you like to do this? And it's really about who you are, and hopefully if you've listened to it, you see, it's really kind of like, what's your journey and why do you do the work you do? And why you what drives you to support education?
I had just a suggestion also for the podcast. I think you should maybe try and talking to students from each of the different schools, and maybe not the same questions, because you can't ask them about occupation and stuff like that because they're students. But I think it would be good to get their perspective on the podcast and just to hear from students.
I love that idea. That's one we've been playing with too. So,
Bill, I'd be willing, willing to do that at, anytime you.
okay, great.
need
Thanks, Jack.
someone for that.
Yeah.
I love to talk too much.
Anybody else want any takers on that?
What's
I
that?
thought that sounded like something new.
You don't know me very well.
All right, well, I may be sending out an email, but, it's one. One of the other things that I've been thinking about with all our public outreach and really trying to solicit information from the public. Last week I was at, the VSA VASBO, budget, 2-day workshop on budgeting and budgeting with smarter budgets. And I saw some of the outreach that other districts are doing, and it made me think about an opportunity that one of the things, we can ask people to come to our board meetings, but we need to go to our board members, where our community are, and talk with them. And so, and I'll do this again through email, but I'd like to invite all of you to think about between now and the next meeting, a place you can go, and you'll see the presentation that I'm gonna do. It's like a 10 to 15 minute presentation just to seed people into a conversation. I would partner with any of you and be willing to be the person to give it, but for you to be a liaison, and then let's get a conversation going
I'd
together.
like to do it at the senior meal in Fairfield.
That'd be great.
They're
Yeah.
really getting a lot of people
Yeah.
attending those meals, so I would definitely like to do that.
Okay. These are the great ideas, yeah. So I'm gonna ask you to think about that between now and next meeting, and really ask everyone to bring an idea of a place that you would do that. And I would be glad to do the presentation for a bit, or we could do it together too, or you could do it all yourself, and I just come and be part of that. But just, however, I'm really flexible about how that is, but I just think the more input we get, as Jack said, this is a tough budget season, the more that we get input from community, staff, students, the board on building this budget. Emerson told me last spring, he said, he was convinced by all the community outreach we were doing through the strategic plan, that was a good reason why we passed the budget. Because we were listening throughout the work with our community. And I agree with him on that. And I think we should keep that going. And our strategic plan says we should keep that going, so. Okay, the last thing, and I'm gonna be a little processy here, I try not to be in my reports, but we've had some instances happen in the past 2 weeks, and I need to read a message about safety and social media. We've had some things come to us, and I'm sorry that I'm just gonna read this. I've tried to put it in my own tone, but it's one of those things that I think there's just some important messages here that need to be said, okay? Dear board members and community members, we are aware of ongoing conversations on social media regarding the safety of our schools. The well-being of our students, staff, and families is always our top priority, and we understand that many of you are deeply passionate about ensuring our schools remain safe and secure. At Maple Run, we've established our regular review our comprehensive safety plan in collaboration with local law enforcement and emergency management teams. This plan includes routine drills, staff training, facility improvements, designed to keep everyone prepared and protected. We're constantly evaluating and refining those measures to meet the highest safety standards. When it comes to discussing concerns, particularly those about safety, we want to remind everyone that social media can sometimes complicate communication by spreading incomplete or inaccurate information. We strongly encourage everyone, board members and our community, to avoid engaging in social media debates or arguments. Instead, contact the central office, myself, your local school administrator, directly if you see something online that needs to be addressed. By using these official channels, we can ensure a unified, clear, and accurate response. Additionally, we want to remind everyone that there's an anonymous tip line available for reporting safety concerns. You can text SAFE, the number 4 VT, or call 844-SAFE the number 4 VT to share information discreetly.
Can you do that again? Bill?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's safe, the number 4 VT, or call 844 SAFE, the number 4 VT.
Thank you.
Those are anonymous ways. If anyone calls any of the leadership team or administrators and wants to report as questions, please do not feel like there'll be any repercussions. We want to do this right, but we understand that emotions can run high and may feel the need to respond immediately, especially when it comes to protecting our schools and our students. However, it's important that our district presents a cohesive message, especially on the matters of such importance. Your help in directing concerns through proper channels is invaluable and allows us to respond thoughtfully and accurately. We appreciate your continued support and commitment to keeping our schools safe and unified. Together, we can ensure the best for all our students and staff. The last thing I'll say is if you see something or hear something, say something. That has stopped 99.9% from what I hear of our safety officials in the nation of instances.
Are students aware of this number?
They're not. I'll just tell you that right now.
Does the number, is it only concerning this district?
No, it's a national text. If you've got a concern, it goes through the public safety
Oh,
officials.
okay, I'm sorry.
not a-
Okay, I thought it was an anonymous thing.
Just for Maple Run, no, it's anonymous. If it's a national system that works with us, that would push it. If it were something in St. Albans, it'd come right down to
Okay,
us.
all right, so if you named your town.
If you
it
named
would
your
come
town,
back
like
to
we
you.
have this issue, if
Yep.
you name the school, it would
Okay.
get to us.
Can we, share that? Is it?
This is a statement that I'm gonna share out after tonight.
To students as well?
I will do it to students as well.
Okay, just
Yeah.
so they're educated as to
Yeah.
how to do it.
Yeah.
I think if we
We
do-
have had a lot of social media instances lately that the facts are getting confounded.
Mm-hmm.
And people are really talking about it through multiple different social media outlets. And we do not respond to social media. I'm just gonna say that straight out. There have been times I have felt urged, and luckily, the people at the other end of that table said, hey, remember what we do. And I'm like, yep, you're right, we don't respond to social media. We do respond to when things are brought to us. And we do check in when someone says, hey, this is happening on social media, please check into it. I don't wanna say we don't check into those things, we do.
So I've seen, stuff going on social media too, about the school. So if I see something like that, screenshot that and send it.
Send it right here, yeah, and I may get back to you like, we know about it, or thank you very much, and there may be not much more I can say.
Right.
But it's like, I wanna make sure we know, and usually.
As long as, even if 6 people have already said, hey, this is what I saw today.
Sometimes, like, I'm on some of that stuff, but I also will tell you for my own mental health, I just gotta say it straight that way, I don't really follow it that much.
Yeah.
I will tell you, 3 of our experts were sitting over there in those chairs that know that stuff inside and out, they can really investigate it.
Yeah,
When
it's
they were
really
here
gone
earlier.
wild over the past week.
Yeah, it has. That's why I felt I needed to say something.
I think in addition to sending that message to students, there should be another way to get that phone number out to students, because if you send that over email, it's not gonna reach most of the student population. A very small percentage regularly checks their emails and regularly reads the whole thing. So I think we need another
It's all
more
yeah.
effective way.
If you're gonna put an
So
email,
what
I
if-
put it
what if
right at
we-
the top.
What if we talk tomorrow in our meeting about a
Okay.
good way of doing that?
Okay, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yep.
I know you said tomorrow, but I feel like one suggestion would be like sharing this with the leadership team and
Yep.
having them go about to the schools and brainstorm on how to really correctly share that with students. I know that may be different at BFA compared to if it's at Fairfield.
And different age groups.
Yeah, totally, exactly. Yep.
I know there is a poster right outside, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I do think I'm one of the more people that reads the posters, and so, like, yeah, no one really reads it, and rightfully so. Who's gonna read a poster that just says that? But I think really making sure that everyone knows, like, that this is the number to text, because I wouldn't do that, like, I didn't even, and it's complicated, like, how do I dial safe? Like, I don't know.
Oh, that's
Like, that's a totally different question for another time. I don't know. I just say, hey Siri, do this, and it does it. I don't know.
Phone right now.
I feel like this is very antiquated for students.
I do know how to dial the letters, but I think we should
Flexing on the rest of us, Marie.
Thank you, Marie.
I think we should put it as an actual phone number because 99% of the student population does not know how to dial it.
Yeah, no. So you got the people who know about it, they don't know how to dial it. You got the people who just don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
When I worked
lose.
When I worked in the schools, you know, when NCSS came out with their, the safety
Yeah.
text number, I went through all my classes and I just had everybody take out their phones and I had everybody put it into their phone and everybody just did it at the same time.
Yeah.
And then it's just there.
Yeah. That was actually like really, that's really good.
Such a good
That's a win.
So, once again, I'm sorry that I had to, I felt really programmed, but we have an excellent, parent, that is in national, is he in national level, or is he just in state level communications?
I believe it's state emergency management.
Yeah, and he helped us write this statement, because they've had to do this in other places, and we said, could you help us write this? So,
Thank you.
so, thank you for all understanding, but that's just something we need to put out there.
See, once upon a time, there was this thing called a rotary phone.
So the problem is once upon a time, I feel like safety is a now issue.
Jacoby, you know, see the keypad out there.
Moving on to board announcements. Do we have any board announcements? I have an announcement and I guess a request. The NCTC did send some students around to the schools in the district, and I believe yesterday, my son came back from city school yesterday, super excited about having talked to the students and getting a chance to come up here and learn about the courses offered. So it was very good outreach, and the students did an excellent job of communicating it. So.
Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out how to do this. So in our public comments, we had some reports of unacceptable behavior, and I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that we can get some follow-up. I'm trying to figure out a way that we can. I am hopeful that it's already being addressed, and
It's already been investigated, addressed, and taken care of.
Okay.
We're in front of it, actually.
Okay, that's good.
And
Trying to figure out.
There's other information that would go behind that, but I would say that we were on top of that.
Okay. Yeah, just trying to figure out, making sure that we're getting follow-up on that without trying to micromanage things, but I'm very happy to hear that we're out in front of it now.
We were.
Okay. Any other board announcements? Plan for board observations. We've gone over this each meeting. Basically, we have our events coming up throughout the district. We have some folks who have talked about what they're going to in the future. Do we have any other folks on the board who are definitely going to be attending some school events?
I went today to a friend's farm, and the outdoor tech class was there, and they're amazing. They did such a great job. But so I went to a Heart and Soil farm in Fairfield and observed them. I know the owners, and I was just talking to one of them, and they said, hey, I got students coming from the tech center. I'm like, can I come over? I've got a board meeting tonight. So they learned about best practices, how to start a business from scratch, what it takes to be a family-run, focused farm. And the owner is she's an agronomist. She has her doctorate in agronomy, whatever that is. But she really focused on she has 4 kids, and she and her husband took them from start to finish on how they created the farm, what she had to do business-wise and schooling-wise, and the kids were eating it up. And then they had 2 different class groups coming. One tore up a part of the field, and another one was doing another part of the field and sowing cover crops. And so they learned from start to finish how to do that, and really listened, and they learned how to read nutrient reports. And they were all over it. It was encouraging to see. And so, that's all.
Any others?
So, I've been to a couple cross-country meets, and they're a lot of fun. And, you know, watching the middle school kids, it was my 7th grade granddaughter. And the one that they had recently, my wife went to, and in October, there was one last year and this year where the kids wear their Halloween costumes and run in the cross country. And it's more for show than the running, but they did run. And it was pretty funny seeing all the kids make up certain costumes. One kid took one of those blow-up Halloween yard things and ran inside that thing. But there are all kinds of creative ideas. Pretty funny. And sometimes the kids run together as a horse or a cow or whatever. So, as my wife said, I don't think they were into the running as much as the costume running. But it's fun that kids do that creative stuff.
That kind of feeds into the next time, which is board reflections. Did y'all happen to fill out your little forms to go with that? And if not, then if you have a chance, if you could identify what school, what district goals you saw being met, that'd be good for our aggregation later. Do we have the forms easily accessible?
They're on the resource page.
Oh,
They're on the resource page.
All right.
Yeah. I see Mary Ann.
They didn't fit all the.
They may not fit all the goals, it may just
Yeah.
be one that you saw. And
Do
that-
you want
and
this
that's okay.
handed in?
We haven't talked about how we're aggregating those. We were talking about handing those in, but,
Because I kind of just wrote it out in the back.
I guess that's up for discussion. When we have these forms, how do we want to?
I think it was a way that we were gonna try to aggregate them to see what are we seeing. That was the idea of having them come in.
You don't want more paper.
We were trying to have them so when we had a bunch that we could sit down, look and say, what goals have we observed, which ones haven't we, what have we seen?
So maybe we could just file it and then we
Yeah.
can decide if
We
we
should-
do that
we just keep
quarterly
it.
or,
Yeah, let's just-
biannually.
So we can
Okay.
keep that, yeah.
Is your filing system more reliable than mine?
I was gonna say, if you just hand it, either you
Sure.
can copy it, you can either copy it, or you can just give it to Aaron and we can put it in a folder, bring it back.
I would have said no. I would have been like, my filing system is not more reliable.
I'm just saying, my filing, so if I'm asked to put something in a drawer, it might not make
Mine
it
is
out.
just this, and then it just kind of crumples
really
up.
want this?
Yeah, it accumulates.
Yeah, that works.
He's probably seen worse.
It's okay. You just gotta, I wanna thank you, Marianne, for using the form, and then it's just the way we started collecting this information for the board.
Do we have any other board reflections? Item 9F is board annual work plan, which we have linked, and do we have any questions or clarifications needed on that? So going on to agenda for future meetings, we have supports for new staff, the budget, safety workers update, and questions about the budget. If you have any questions that we want to bring up, a reminder to send them over to Aaron. Any other items to add to the agenda for future meetings? We don't need an executive session, so unless there's anything else, It is 8:04 and we are adjourned.